Hello, everyone. This is my PowerPoint presentation for our final project here in English 2010. I have titled my paper and this PowerPoint, Our Grades Are Failing Us. The topic and claim that I'm going to be arguing and asserting here is that the American grading system is inadequate in assessing students, and that inadequacy reduces schooling down to a trivial check off the box activity that doesn't have any kind of impact, at least any kind of large impact on student learning and development. This paper was prepared for Sydney Dixon. She is the Superintendent of Public Instruction for the Utah Board of Education. I wanted to prepare it for her because I feel that if we are going to be making a change, especially here more locally, where change is a little easier to make on a faster scale than it is on the federal level. Great person to start if we're looking to change the way we teach and assess students is someone who's over public instruction. So that would be Sydney Dixon for the state of Utah. I'm hoping to use this paper and this presentation here to make it pretty apparent how both two things are going to be covered here, both how grades are inadequate, what makes them inadequate, and why they don't work very well as assessments for student progress and student development. And then I'd also want to cover the harms that come from them and why that inadequacy actually is a problem that needs to be solved. So that is the goal for this PowerPoint here. This here is what I call the grading delta. I call it this because when you think about the way that a student goes to earn an A, you have the path that they take to earn a passing grade in a class. And whereas you would assume that would assemble more of a road, right? They're traveling straight towards that grade. What we actually see is more of something like a river delta when it enters into a body of water. There are just a myriad of different paths and different ways that it can take to get to its final destination. There is not one clear and distinct way that they got there. And this is something that causes a problem in the world of education because it differs from the way that the typical world works. Whereas a politician, you know that politician is in that office because they won the election to get there. The president is the president because he won the presidential election. You know a sports team is the champion. The Super Bowl champions are the champions because they won the Super Bowl. The the MLB World Series champions are the champions because they won the World Series. There is no other way to actually get to that endpoint. It's a straight path. There's like you don't look at a politician and wonder, did they really win the election? Did they just kind of like wander into office? You know for a fact they did what they needed to do to get there. But when we look at the grades that a student gets, when we see a student has an A, for example, there's a little bit more doubt thrown into that. And this comes because there are differences. There are different ways that teachers can assign grades and different ways that students can earn A's. In the same way that a student can earn an A by memorizing everything and regurgitating on it on a test, or learning the things that they need to and actually understanding that for the test, or writing it down on a note card and using that for the test, whatever it may be, or a teacher can also give out grades in many different ways. They're subjective. Grades are subjective, and because of that, their opinions, their judgment, their own personal thoughts on the matter are going to affect it a lot. This is something that Thomas Guskey noted in a certain study that was done, where equally experienced and knowledgeable teachers, all for the same class, all on the same level, assigned grades to the same sample of evidence, and these teachers all varied by about 10 to 15 percentage points in the grades that were given, which can be the difference between a C or an F, or a C and a B, or a B and an A. It can make a big difference in a student's life and progress. And so when we have these kind of differences, in the ways that grades are given and the ways that students get to that final grade and the ways that teachers give grades, there casts some doubt on, when this student has an A in this class, how did they actually get that? Is that because they're actually learning, or is there a different reason behind it? Take, for example, this personal experience from a professor at Duke University. His name, I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name actually. Um, but he said, if I sprinkle my classroom with the C's, some students deserve my class will suffer from declining enrollments in future years. In the marketplace mentality of higher education, low enrollments are taken as a sign of poor quality instruction, and I don't have any interest in being known as a failure. So we can see that not only are there multiple ways for a teacher to actually give a grade and multiple factors that come down to their own judgment and subjectivity when it comes to handing out grades. There's also outside pressures of, I don't want to be a failing teacher. I don't want to be seen as mean or harsh. I want to have that, that high enrollment, that good sign of I'm a good teacher, I'm a good professor. So there are these other outside factors that are influencing grades that shouldn't have any kind of influence on a student's progress or how much they're learning. And so when we have these kind of factors that are influencing the grades that are being given, there's a big problem because now we're having some doubt thrown into how accurate was that grade really? Is that really more based on the teacher's opinion? Is it based on him not wanting to be seen as a bad person? Or is it actually based on the student's progress and skills in that class? This is not a problem that's very secret, very quiet. It is pretty known that grades aren't exactly doing what we want to do right now. And we can see that as we look throughout the country. There are a lot of states who are working on making progress right now, making changes to the way we do it. Colorado districts are trying to get rid of D's in the grading system. Virginia, they're trying to figure out a little more clearly what an F actually means. Does that mean failure? Or does it mean, needs improvement? In Iowa, letter grades are they're trying to actually put more feedback and more teacher wording and comments and concerns along with that letter grade instead of just an overall score. So there is some changes that are being made throughout the country. This isn't anything that's super new. Going back to Thomas Guskey here, this is from a different article of his. He believes that by developing and implementing these kind of grading policies and practices, especially ones that will highlight grades' usefulness as feedback and reduce, hopefully, any of those negative connotations, he believes that that could ensure their proper use and do the trick in getting rid of that inadequacy. And while that is a very I mean, he's not wrong. These kind of processes, these kind of new policies and practices are definitely something that can help improve the system that we're at right now. Unfortunately, it is my opinion and the opinion of, I believe, the main body of research on this topic that that isn't quite going to be enough. We can continue to trim and pry and just kind of tweak different bits and pieces of the way we do grades right now, but any kind of small change is never going to be enough. We're always going to land at the fact that it's just not quite accurate enough. We can never fully pull it out. If you want to get rid of a weed, you can't just start chopping the leaves. You've got to actually pull out the root. Alfie Kohn, he is one of the most forefront authors and writers on this subject, a graduate of Brown University and the University of Chicago. He wrote that a teacher can meticulously record scores for one test or assignment after another, eventually calculating averages down to 1/100th of a percentage point. But that doesn't change the arbitrariness of each of these individual marks. So even if you get super specific, super down to every single thing perfectly right, it still comes down to the subjectivity of the teacher. We're never really going to be able to fully fix everything in the grading system with just some small changes here and there. This is going to require a major overhaul. Going to some of the negative harms and effects that are caused by grades and that lead to a bigger reason for why we actually need to have this kind of overhaul. According to a Dutch research facility that's called Think at THNK, they have found that the expectation of receiving grades actually creates a risk-averse behavior. This idea in students' minds that we need to avoid failure, we need to take the easiest path we can to get an A, and that's what's going to do it for us. Of course, that causes a problem. Now we're avoiding failure, which can help us lead to more success, more good things in the future. And as along with that, Alfie Kohn again has found that pretty much any study that has been done on this has found that grades and learning are inversely related. You either have a grading focus or you have a learning focus. You can't have both. There was a study even done that found that when students were given an assignment and told they were going to be graded on it versus students who were told they weren't going to be graded on it, those students that weren't graded performed far higher, they understood it better, and they retained the information far longer. So grades have a clear impact on our learning. There are my references sorted for this assignment here. These are my 2 questions. How much information from previous classes do you legitimately remember and utilize day by day, and how often do you find yourself working for the easiest A?